This how a millionaire reacts when a girl sings a song. He wrote in college. Marcus Sullivan, 45, is a successful tech entrepreneur in Seattle who built a digital empire after abandoning his musical dreams in youth. During a night walk through Pike Place Market, he hears a young street artist, Emma Rodriguez, 22, singing a song he wrote at 19 at the University of Washington, a composition never published that he thought was lost forever. Intrigued and emotionally shaken, Marcus begins a journey to discover how Emma knows this song, revealing secrets from his past and reconnecting with the passion he abandoned for financial success. October's fine rain created a translucent curtain over Seattle's streets, reflecting the neon lights of late-night establishments. Marcus Sullivan adjusted the collar of his Italian wool coat as he walked across the uneven stones of Pike Place Market. At 45, his graying temples and elegant bearing revealed the success he'd achieved as CEO of Technova Solutions, a software company he'd founded 15 years earlier. It was nearly midnight on a Friday, and Marcus had just left another meeting that stretched beyond business hours. His footsteps echoed through the nearly empty market, where only a few late vendors were still packing their stalls. He enjoyed these solitary moments. They were the only times he could escape the constant bombardment of emails, calls, and meetings that dominated his life. As he passed the famous gum wall, a soft melody cut through the night air. Marcus stopped abruptly, his breath condensing in the cold air. The voice was female, young, carrying a melancholy that seemed to pierce his soul. But it wasn't just the beauty of the performance that froze him in place. It was the song itself. When the city lights begin to fade and the dreams we built start to decay, the words hit him like a punch to the stomach. He knew every verse, every chord, every dramatic pause. It was impossible. It had been over 20 years since he'd written that song in his University of Washington dorm room during a sleepless night after breaking up with Sarah, his girlfriend at the time. With hesitant steps, Marcus followed the melody until he found its source. A young Latina was seated on a folding stool with a worn acoustic guitar resting on her lap. She couldn't have been more than 22, with wavy, brown hair escaping from a navy blue wool beanie. Her eyes were closed as she sang, completely immersed in the music. The promises we made under starlit skies, now they're just echoes of our goodbyes. Marcus felt his legs weaken. He leaned discreetly against one of the market's support columns, watching the girl with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. The open guitar case at her feet contained a few coins and some dollar bills. Clearly, she was playing for money. The music continued, and Marcus realized she wasn't just singing his composition. She knew it perfectly. Every modulation, every variation he'd created that night in 1999, when he still believed he could be a professional musician. When Emma, he didn't know her name yet, reached the chorus, Marcus unconsciously moved his lips along with the words. It was surreal, as if the universe was playing a trick on him, returning a piece of himself he'd buried deeply under spreadsheets, presentations, and board meetings. But in the silence of the night, I still hear your whispered fight against the world that pulled us apart. The young woman opened her eyes at the end of the song, and for a moment she and Marcus locked gazes. She had expressive brown eyes that seemed loaded with experiences far beyond her apparent age. There was a moment of mutual recognition, not as if they already knew each other, but as if they shared something inexplicable. That was beautiful, Marcus said, approaching slowly. His voice came out hoarser than he expected. Where did you learn that song? Emma smiled shyly, lowering her gaze to the guitar. Thank you. It's complicated. My grandmother taught it. To me, she said it was special, that it meant a lot to someone she knew long ago. Marcus felt his heart race. Your grandmother, is she still alive? No, Emma replied softly. adjusting the guitar strings. She died 2 years ago, but she left notebooks full of songs. This is one of my favorites, though I've never been able to figure out who originally wrote it. The businessman stood silent for a long moment, processing the information. How was it possible that an unknown young woman's grandmother had a song he'd written privately, never shared with anyone except Sarah, he murmured without realizing. Excuse me? Emma looked up, confused. Marcus realized he'd spoken aloud. Nothing, sorry. It's just... that song reminded me of someone. Do you play?
Here often.
A few nights a week, she replied, starting to put away the guitar. I'm saving for college. I want to study music therapy at UW, University of Washington, the same institution where Marcus had abandoned his musical dreams to focus on computer science, influenced by family pressures and the promise of financial stability. I'm Marcus, he said, extending his hand. Emma, she replied, shaking his hand. Marcus. You're not Marcus Sullivan from Technova, are you? He nodded, surprised she recognized him. How do you know? My brother works in tech. He always talks about you as an inspiration. Says you started from nothing and built an empire. Emma observed him with renewed curiosity. But why is a millionaire CEO walking alone through Pike Place Market on a Friday night? The question was simple, but loaded with a perceptiveness that surprised him. Marcus hesitated, unaccustomed to this transparency in his social interactions. Sometimes we need to remember where we came from, he answered honestly. And you? Why did you choose that specific song to play tonight? Emma smiled melancholically. Because it's one of the most honest I know. It talks about loss, about dreams that didn't work out, but also about hope. When I play it, I feel like I'm honoring my grandmother's memory and somehow connecting with the person who originally wrote it. Marcus felt a knot in his throat. That was exactly what he'd tried to capture when he wrote that song. The duality between the melancholy of loss and the hope of a new beginning. Would you like to get some coffee? He asked impulsively. I know a place that's open 24 hours. I'd like to know more about your grandmother, about the other songs she left. Emma studied him for a moment, clearly weighing whether it was safe to accept a stranger's invitation. But there was something in Marcus's expression of vulnerability that showed through his business facade that made her trust him. Okay, she finally said, but with one condition. You tell me why that specific song affected you so much. I saw the expression on your face when I started singing. Marcus nodded, knowing he'd opened a door he couldn't close anymore. As they walked together through Seattle's wet streets, he wondered how a chance encounter could have unearthed so many memories he'd worked so hard to forget. The silence that followed was charged with electricity. Emma watched Marcus with a mixture of disbelief and growing curiosity, while he struggled to process the magnitude of the coincidence, or was it destiny, that had brought them together. That night, they entered the 24-hour cafe Marcus had mentioned, a small, cozy establishment called The Grind, frequented mainly by college students and night shift workers. Marcus chose a table in the back, away from the few customers present. While waiting for their orders, black coffee for him, hot chocolate for her, Marcus observed Emma more carefully. There was a maturity in her gestures that contrasted with her apparent age, as if she'd faced challenges that had forced her to grow up quickly. So, Emma said, warming her hands on the hot chocolate cup, your turn to fulfill our bargain. Why did that song affect you so much? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing the moment of truth had arrived. For years, he'd built walls around his past, creating a public persona of a successful businessman that left little room for vulnerability. Because I wrote it, he said simply. Emma almost dropped her hot chocolate. You what? I wrote that song 26 years ago when I was 19 and studying at the University of Washington. It was 1999. I was in my second year of computer science, but my real dream was to be a musician. Emma's eyes widened. That's impossible. How could my grandmother have a song you wrote and never published? That's exactly the question that's keeping me awake, Marcus admitted. What was your grandmother's full name? Sarah Elena Rodriguez, Emma answered automatically, then frowned. Wait, you said the name Sarah earlier when you heard me playing. Did you know her? Marcus felt the world spin around him. Sarah Rodriguez. His Sarah had married and adopted her husband's surname. The girl across from him wasn't just a stranger who knew his song. She was the granddaughter of the woman he'd written that composition for. Yes, he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. I knew your grandmother very well. Marcus began to tell the story of his relationship with Sarah, their passionate college romance, the pressures he felt to abandon music for a stable career, and the terrible fight that led to their breakup in October 1999. That same night, I locked myself in my dorm room and wrote that song, Marcus continued. I was pouring all my pain, my anger, my regret into every verse. It was about loss, about choices we make that change us forever, about how sometimes we hurt the people we love most because we're hurting too. Emma remained silent for a long moment, absorbing the story. You never spoke to her again? I tried, Marcus admitted. A few weeks later, when the anger passed and I realized what an idiot I'd been, but she transferred to another university. I heard she went to the East Coast, but I never managed to find her. This was before social media, remember? It was much harder to track people down. Emma pulled something from her backpack, an old notebook with a worn leather cover. I brought something that might interest you. Marcus looked at the notebook with curiosity. What is it? My grandmother's songs. All of them. Emma opened the notebook, revealing pages and pages of handwritten lyrics, chords noted in the margins. After last night, I stayed up reading everything again, and I found interesting things. She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for. Here, she said, pointing to an entry dated November 1999. It's clearly your song, but look at this. Marcus read Sarah's annotations in the margins. Besides the chords and melody, there were small personal comments. Remember the harmony he used in the chorus? His voice always broke in this part. I wish he knew how much this song touches me. There's more, Emma continued, turning several pages. Look at this entry from December 1999. It was a new lyric, clearly written by Sarah as a response to Marcus's song. It was called Whispered Apologies and contained verses about regret, unspoken words, and lost chances. If I could turn back time and make you stay, I'd tell you that your music saved my darkest day. Marcus read aloud, his voice trembling. She wrote this in December 1999, a few weeks after you broke up, Emma confirmed. And there's more. She continued writing about you for years. Not directly, but you can see it between the lines. Emma showed him compositions from subsequent years, songs about lost love, parallel lives, and acceptance. This one she wrote on her wedding day in 2004. Marcus read the lyrics titled Two Paths. It was about choices, about how two people can love each other but follow different paths, about accepting that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome circumstances. But it wasn't bitter. It was melancholic, full of gratitude for the shared experience. She loved me, he whispered more to himself than to Emma. Always, Emma confirmed, but she also respected you. Respected your choice to move forward, even if it meant leaving her behind. Marcus gently closed the notebook, as if it were a sacred artifact. Emma, can I ask you something that might sound strange? Do you look like her? Physically, I mean. Emma smiled. Everyone always said so, especially the eyes and face shape. Why? Because being here with you, hearing about Sarah through your eyes, is like having a second chance to know her the right way, to understand who she really was, beyond the girl I fell in love with when I was young. After a moment of silence, Marcus made an impulsive decision. Emma, I know this might sound crazy coming from someone you just met, but I want to pay for your college education. Emma protested, but Marcus insisted. For the last 26 years, I've built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I have apartments, cars, investments, but you know what I don't have? Real purpose, passion, the feeling that I'm doing something that truly matters. But Marcus, I can't accept this. You barely know me. I'm not doing this for you, Marcus said, gently. I'm doing it for Sarah. For all the years she kept my song. For all the love she nurtured even after I hurt her. It's the only way I have to apologize to her. Emma was quiet for a long moment. If I accept this, and I said if, it has to be with one condition. What? You have to go back to making music, Marcus was surprised. Emma, I haven't played in over 20 years. I don't even have a guitar anymore. Then we'll buy one, she said determinedly. Marcus, you're 45, not 85. It's not too late to reconnect with that part of yourself. After much discussion, they reached an agreement. Marcus would fund Emma's education, and she would help him rediscover his musical passion. They also agreed that when she graduated, they would compose a song together, something new that honored Sarah's memory while looking toward the future. As they left the cafe together, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. Through Emma, he had a chance not just to make peace with the past, but to rebuild a bridge to the part of himself he'd lost. The University of Washington campus was particularly beautiful that October Saturday. The tree leaves created a mosaic of golden and reddish colors, and the soft afternoon light filtered through the branches, creating dancing patterns on the ground. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, wearing jeans and a casual sweater, a dramatic change from his usual corporate suit. Emma appeared punctually at 2 o'clock, carrying a vintage leather backpack and the same guitar from the night before. She'd traded the beanie for a red beret that complemented her gray wool coat. There was something about the way she moved, a natural grace that vaguely reminded him of Sarah. Ready for a trip down memory lane? She asked with a smile. As ready as anyone can be, Marcus replied. Where should we start? You said you met my grandmother in the library. How about we start there? They walked through the campus at a relaxed pace. Marcus pointed out buildings that had been constructed or renovated since his student days, but was impressed by how much had remained the same. The essence of the place, the young and academic energy, remained unchanged. They arrived at Suzalo Library with its imposing Gothic architecture. Marcus stopped at the entrance, memories flooding his mind like a dam that had burst. It was here, he said softly. Table 47 in the third floor reference section. She was studying for a Victorian literature exam, and I was trying to finish a programming project. I spilled my coffee on her books. Emma laughed. How romantic. Not my smoothest approach, Marcus admitted. But it worked. I spent the rest of the afternoon helping her copy the pages I'd soaked, and when we finished, she asked me if I wanted to have dinner. They climbed the stairs to the third floor. The library was busier than in Marcus's time, with more computers and fewer silent study spaces, but table 47 was still there. Marcus approached it as if it were an altar. Do you mind? He asked, indicating one of the chairs. Emma shook her head, watching him with curiosity. Marcus sat in the same chair he'd occupied 26 years earlier, closing his eyes and letting the memories flow. She was wearing a light blue sweater, he murmured, hair pinned up with a pencil. She had a habit of biting her lower lip when she was concentrating, and when she laughed for the first time after I apologized for the coffee, I knew I was lost. Emma sat in the chair beside him. What were you like together? Marcus opened his eyes. Intense. We spent hours talking about everything: music, literature, politics, dreams. She introduced me to Neruda's poetry. I showed her bands she'd never heard. We were different enough to challenge each other, but similar enough to understand each other deeply. Emma pulled something from her backpack, the old leather-bound notebook. I brought something that might interest you. She opened the notebook, revealing pages of handwritten lyrics and chords. After last night, I stayed up reading everything again, and I found interesting things. She flipped to a page dated November 1999. It's clearly your song, but look at Sarah's notes in the margins. Marcus read the personal comments Sarah had written beside the lyrics, realizing she'd not only kept his song, but had studied it, understood its deeper meaning, and even written response songs. "There's more," Emma said, showing him a composition from December 1999 titled Whispered Apologies. "If I could turn back time and make you stay, I'd tell you that your music saved my darkest day." Marcus's voice trembled as he read Sarah's words. She had understood the true essence of his song and had spent years processing their relationship through music. They left the library and walked to his old dormitory. Standing in the corridor where he'd written the song that changed everything, Marcus told Emma about that painful night when he'd poured his heart into lyrics about loss and regret. "Emma," he said, looking directly at her, "I need to ask you something. How did your grandmother meet your grandfather? How did she move forward?" "She met him in 2002 when she was doing her master's in education," Emma replied. "He was a visiting professor from Columbia. Grandmother always said it wasn't love at first sight like it had been with that boy from college. Now I know that was you. With grandfather it was different. It was a slow building, based on mutual respect and shared goals." Was she happy with him? Very. But in a different way, mature, stable. She told me once that there are different types of love in a person's life. The burning love of youth that teaches you about passion, and the serene love of maturity that teaches you about partnership. Marcus considered this as they stood in the hallway where his life had taken such a different turn. So she had both. She did, and she was always grateful for that. Emma showed him more of Sarah's notebook, revealing years of compositions that reflected her growth, her marriage, her family, but also her continued connection to the music and memories they'd shared. "Marcus," Emma said finally, "I have an idea. What if we don't just compose one song together? What if we created something bigger?" "What do you mean?" Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "What if we started a music therapy program using your story, my grandmother's story, as an example of how music can heal and connect people across time?" Marcus was intrigued. "Go on. Think about it. How many people like you are out there? People who abandoned artistic dreams for practical pressures, who sacrificed passions for stability. What if we could create a space where they could revisit those lost parts of themselves?" Emma outlined her vision for a community music therapy center, a place where people could reconnect with abandoned dreams and use music as a tool for healing and self-discovery. "We could start small," she said. "You, me, and a few other people. Weekly sessions where each participant brings a song they wrote in the past, or a song that represents an abandoned dream." Marcus felt a familiar wave of emotion, the same he'd felt that distant night in his dorm room when music flowed from him like water from a long-blocked spring. "Where would this happen?" he asked. "Remember that cafe where we talked the first night? The Grind?" "Yes. The owner is retiring. Wants to sell the business. I thought maybe we could transform it into something new. A community music therapy center during the day, cafe with live music at night." Marcus looked at Emma with a mixture of admiration and surprise. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Not everything yet," Emma admitted. "It would need initial investment, licenses, equipment, hiring other therapists. But Marcus, imagine the symbolism. The place where you told me about my grandmother becoming a space dedicated to reconnecting people with their lost passions. Marcus felt the same certainty he'd felt when making his biggest business decisions. How much? Marcus, I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a partnership. After much discussion, they agreed to move forward together. Marcus would provide the capital and business experience, while Emma would bring her knowledge of music therapy. Together, they would create something unique, not just a business, but a legacy. For Sarah, Marcus said. For her, for you, for all the people who've lost touch with important parts of themselves, Emma replied. As they walked back through the campus, where it all began, Marcus felt like he was finally closing a circle that had remained open for more than 2 decades. 6 months had passed since that transformative encounter at Pike Place Market. Winter had come to Seattle with its characteristic rain and gray skies, but for Marcus, the city had never seemed more vibrant. He was sitting in his office atop the Technova building, but his executive desk now shared space with something that hadn't been there for more than 2 decades. A polished Martin D28 acoustic guitar, waiting. Emma entered the office carrying a folder and radiating contagious energy. In recent months, Marcus had become not just her educational sponsor, but also a mentor and friend. They met weekly, sometimes to talk about Emma's studies, sometimes for their music sessions. Moments when Marcus tried to remember long-forgotten skills, while Emma patiently guided him. "How was the clinical psychology exam?" Marcus asked. "Better than expected," Emma replied, sitting down. "Dr. Williams said my essay on trauma and music therapy was one of the best in the class." "That doesn't surprise me. You have a unique perspective on how music can heal." Emma opened the folder and took out some handwritten sheets. "Actually, that's what I want to talk about today. Remember you said you wanted to compose a new song together when I graduated?" "Of course. But that's not for 4 years. Well," Emma said with a mischievous smile, "I have a different proposal. What if we started now? And what if it was more than just one song?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Emma stood up and began pacing around the office, her words gaining speed as her excitement grew. "What if we created a music therapy program that specifically helped people reconnect with lost parts of themselves, using their own compositions as a starting point?" "Continue. Think about it," Emma said, stopping in front of the window overlooking the city. "How many people like you exist out there? People who abandoned artistic dreams for practical pressures, who sacrificed passions for stability. What if we could create a space where they could revisit those lost parts of themselves? It's an interesting idea, but how would it work in practice?" Emma turned around, her eyes shining with determination. "We'd start small. You, me, and a few other people. Weekly sessions where each participant brings a song they wrote in the past or a song that represents an abandoned dream. We use music therapy to explore the emotions behind those choices, to process regrets and rediscover passions." Marcus walked over to where he'd left the guitar. "And you think this would really help people?" "I know it would," Emma said with conviction. "Marcus, you've seen the transformation in yourself over the last 6 months. When we started our sessions, you could barely remember basic chords. Now you're composing again." It was true. Marcus had written 3 new songs in recent weeks. Nothing revolutionary, but honest songs that captured his journey of rediscovery. The process had been therapeutic in a way he hadn't expected. "Besides," Emma continued, "we have a powerful story to tell. Your original song, the way my grandmother preserved it, our meeting. It's like a perfect case study of how music can transcend time and circumstances to heal and connect." Marcus picked up the guitar and played a few chords thoughtfully. "Have you thought about where this would happen? How it would be structured?" "Actually, Emma said, pulling more papers from the folder. "I've already talked to some professors at UW. Dr. Chen from the music therapy department is interested in supervising this as a research project. And," she hesitated, as if about to reveal something big. "And," Marcus encouraged, "and I found the perfect place. Remember that cafe where we talked the first night? The Grind." "I remember. The owner is retiring, wants to sell the business. I thought maybe we could transform it into something new. A community music therapy center during the day, cafe with live music at night." Marcus stopped playing, looking at Emma with admiration and surprise. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Not everything yet," Emma admitted. "It would need initial investment, licenses, equipment, hiring other therapists. But Marcus, imagine the symbolism. The place where you told me about my grandmother becoming a space dedicated to reconnecting people with their lost passions." Marcus put the guitar back on its stand and turned to Emma. "How much?" "Marcus, I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a partnership." "What do you mean?" Emma sat down again, her energy focusing. "You have the capital, I have the theoretical knowledge in music therapy. Together, we could create something unique, not just a business, but a legacy. A legacy for Sarah, for her, for you, for all the people who've lost touch with important parts of themselves." Emma leaned forward. "Marcus, you changed my life by giving me the opportunity to study. Let me return the favor by helping you change other people's lives." Marcus walked to the window, looking at the city that had witnessed his journey, from youthful dreams to business achievements, and now, perhaps, to something completely new. "You know," he said slowly, "in the last 25 years, I've built a company that affects the lives of millions of people, but they're affected superficially. Apps that make tasks more efficient, systems that organize information. I've never created anything that truly touched someone's soul. Until now," Emma said softly. Marcus turned to her. "Do you really believe this can work?" "I believe it can be extraordinary," Emma replied. "But even if it helped just one person reconnect with their lost passion, it would be worth it." Marcus looked at the guitar, then at Emma, then at the proposals and sketches spread across the table. In his mind, he could visualize the space she'd described, people of all ages gathered together, sharing songs and stories, rediscovering parts of themselves they'd buried under responsibilities and expectations. "All right," he said finally, "but with one condition." Emma smiled. "What?" "The first song we play at the opening will be the one I wrote 26 years ago. The song that started all of this, with a small modification," Emma suggested. "How about we write a second part, a continuation that talks about redemption, about second chances, about what happens when we finally have the courage to return into our dreams?" Marcus felt a familiar wave of emotion, the same he'd felt that distant night in his university dorm room when music flowed from him like water from a long-blocked spring. "Echoes of Tomorrow," he said suddenly. "What?" "The name of the new song, Echoes of Tomorrow, because that's what we're doing, creating echoes of the future we want to build." Emma stood up and extended her hand. "Partners?" Marcus shook her hand, then pulled her into a paternal hug. "Partners. And Emma?" "Yes, your grandmother would be very proud." Epilogue. 1 year later, the former Grind had transformed into Echoes Music Therapy Center. The space maintained the cozy charm of the original cafe, but now had therapy rooms, equipped with various instruments, a small library of sheet music and music therapy books, and a central stage where group sessions happened during the day and intimate performances occurred at night. On opening night, a small but enthusiastic audience gathered for the first official performance. Marcus, now 46, and with fingers again calloused from playing guitar, took the stage alongside Emma. She had graduated with honors and was starting her master's in music therapy, using the center as a base for her research. "Good evening," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice showing only a trace of nervousness. "My name is Marcus Sullivan, and 26 years ago, I wrote a song in this city. I thought I'd lost it forever, until an extraordinary young woman brought it back to life." He looked at Emma, who smiled encouragingly. "Tonight, we want to share that song with you, along with its continuation, a song about second chances, about having the courage to return to our dreams, and about how music can connect us across time and distance." Marcus began playing the familiar chords of his original composition when Emma joined him, singing the words he'd written on a night of pain and regret. He felt a completeness he'd forgotten was possible. When the city lights begin to fade, and the dreams we built start to decay. But this time, when the original song ended, they continued seamlessly into the new section they'd composed together. But in the silence, I hear a call to rise again. After the fall, the music lives. It never dies. It finds new voices, new souls to rise. As they played, Marcus saw faces in the audience reflecting their own journeys. Some people crying silently, others smiling with recognition, all connected by the universal language of music and shared human experience. When the song ended, the applause was warm but respectful, the kind of reaction that comes from people who have been genuinely touched. But for Marcus, the most significant moment came afterward, when a woman of about 50 approached him. "Thank you," she said simply. "I haven't played piano in 15 years. After hearing you tonight, I think I'm ready to try again." As the night continued and more people shared their own stories of lost and found dreams, Marcus looked at Emma, who was talking animatedly with a group of young musicians. She had inherited not only Sarah's musical talent, but also her ability to inspire and nurture others' dreams. Later, after the last guests had left and they were cleaning up the space, Emma approached Marcus. "You know what I think my grandmother would say if she could see all this?" "What?" "That sometimes the most beautiful music is born from the silence that comes after pain. And that true love, whether for a person or for a dream, never really dies. It just waits patiently for the chance to bloom again." Marcus looked around. The center they'd created together, a space dedicated exactly to that kind of blooming. On the wall hung a framed photo of Sarah from her college years, an image Emma had found among her grandmother's belongings. Her young, hopeful eyes seemed to approve of what they'd built in her memory. "I think she's right," Marcus said, putting his guitar away. "And I think this is just the beginning." As they left the center that first night, Marcus realized he'd finally found a way to honor both the young dreamer he'd been and the accomplished man he'd become. The Echoes Music Therapy Center was more than a business or philanthropic project. It was a bridge between past and future, between regret and redemption, between the music he'd lost and the music yet to be created. And somewhere, he was certain, Sarah was smiling, knowing that the song he'd written on a night of pain had finally found its true harmony. The end. Did the story, "This is how a millionaire reacts when a girl sings a song he wrote in college," move you? We'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what touched you most. Also, where in the world are you watching from? It's incredible to see how far these stories reach. And here at M&A, the story unfolds. We love connecting with viewers from around the globe. Drop your city, country, or even just a flag emoji in the comments. Let's come together through the power of storytelling.